Most people still believe artificial intelligence is about intelligence. Better models? Smarter algorithms? More data? That's what the headlines say. That's what the product announcements celebrate. That's what billions of dollars in marketing have trained you to believe. But that's not what's really happening. Because behind every AI system you use, behind every answer generated, every image created, every decision automated, there is something far more powerful than intelligence. And far more dangerous. Not a model. Not an algorithm. Control. And right now, that control is quietly being locked in. Not in some distant future. Not in a boardroom conversation that hasn't happened yet. Right now. In real time. With real money. And real consequences. And by the time most people realize what's happening, it will already be too late to change it. Here's the thing that changes how you see this entire industry. This isn't a race you can join later. It's not like social media, where a new platform could emerge and disrupt the existing order. It's not like smartphones, where a new manufacturer could enter the market and compete on features. What's being built right now is infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't work like products. Infrastructure consolidates. It centralizes. It becomes harder and harder to replicate as it scales. And eventually, it becomes impossible to compete with. Think about what happened with electricity. In the early days of electrical power, the system was fragmented. Multiple providers. Local networks. Independent systems operating in isolation. It looked like a competitive market. But over time, it consolidated into a small number of dominant grids. Not because one company cheated. Not because regulators failed. But because once infrastructure reaches a certain scale, the cost of building a competing system becomes economically impossible. And the same dynamic is happening with AI. Except this time, it's moving faster. Much faster. And the stakes are incomparably higher. To understand what's actually being built, you need to stop thinking about AI as a product. Because it's not a product. It's a stack. A full vertical system. And whoever controls the stack, controls the outcome. Let's go from the bottom up. At the very foundation, you have raw materials. Rare earth minerals. Lithium. Cobalt. Silicon. The physical elements without which none of this exists. Without them, there are no chips. Without chips, there is no compute. Without compute, there is no AI. At all. The supply of these materials is geographically concentrated in a small number of countries. And control over those supply chains is already a major strategic priority for the world's most powerful governments. Above that, you have manufacturing. Chip fabrication. One of the most technically complex and capital-intensive processes ever engineered by human civilization. A single advanced semiconductor factory costs over $20 billion to build and takes years to become operational. The knowledge required to run it took decades to accumulate. And globally, this manufacturing capacity is concentrated in fewer than a handful of facilities. Above manufacturing, you have compute infrastructure. Massive data centers consuming electricity at a scale that rivals entire cities. These facilities don't just process AI, they define what AI is capable of. The companies that own the most compute don't just run faster. They can train models that smaller players literally cannot build, regardless of how good their software is. Then comes the model layer. The part everyone sees. The chatbots. The image generators. The assistants. The layer that gets all the attention. But here's what most people miss. The model layer is the least powerful layer. Because models depend on everything beneath them. And whoever controls what's beneath, controls what models are possible. Right now, a small number of companies and governments are building systems so large, so expensive, and so deeply interconnected that no one else will be able to replicate them. Not startups. Not smaller countries. Not even most large corporations. Because once these systems reach full scale, they create what economists call a lock-in effect, where switching becomes economically irrational, where competition becomes theoretical rather than real, where the gap between the leaders and everyone else doesn't close, it compounds. And here's where this stops being a technology story and becomes something much more serious. Because this isn't just about economics. It's about power. Real power. The kind of power that shapes decisions before they're even made visible. AI is not just answering questions. It's influencing behavior. It's filtering information. It's shaping how people perceive reality. And if a small number of entities control the systems behind that process, they don't just control technology. They influence what people think is true. They shape what options seem available. They define what feels normal. And control over what feels normal is the most durable form of power ever discovered. This is the part that never makes the headlines. Because the most important thing happening in artificial intelligence right now is not a new model release. It's not a benchmark result. It's not a product launch. It's the consolidation of infrastructure. And it's happening in plain sight. Massive capital investments announced publicly. New data centers breaking ground across multiple continents. Energy deals being signed between tech giants and power utilities. Chip supply agreements, structured years into the future. Government subsidies flowing into domestic semiconductor production. Export controls being tightened and expanded. All of this is visible. All of it is reported. But most people don't connect the dots. Because they're focused on the surface. New features. New interfaces. New capabilities. While underneath, the foundation is being poured and sealed. Think about what the railroads did to the American economy in the 19th century. The companies that owned the tracks didn't just move goods faster. They decided which cities would grow and which would be bypassed. They determined which industries could scale and which couldn't. They shaped the economic geography of an entire nation for generations. And they did it not through intelligence or innovation alone, but through infrastructure control. The same pattern repeated with telecommunications, with broadcast media, with the internet itself. Every time a new infrastructure layer emerged, the entities that moved first and moved biggest captured advantages that compounded over decades. AI is not different from this pattern. It is the latest, and most powerful, instance of it. And we are currently in the window where the initial positions are being established, where the infrastructure is being built, where the control is being distributed, negotiated, and contested. But that window is closing faster than most people understand. Here's what the end game actually looks like. The biggest players in AI are not just building models. They are building ecosystems. Closed, vertically integrated systems where hardware connects to software, connects to cloud infrastructure, connects to data, connects to distribution. And once users, companies, and governments enter these ecosystems, leaving becomes structurally difficult. Not because they're trapped by force, but because everything is integrated. Everything is optimized. Everything is dependent on everything else. Your data is in the system. Your workflows are built on the system. Your decisions are informed by the system. Your team is trained on the system. And at some point, the cost of leaving exceeds the cost of staying. That's the lock-in. And that's the real endgame. Not just building the most capable AI, but building systems that the world cannot function without. Because control isn't about force. It never was. It's about dependency. And once dependency is established at scale, control becomes invisible. It becomes ambient. It becomes the water everyone is swimming in, without noticing it's water at all. There's one more dimension to this that almost nobody is talking about. The behavioral layer. Every time you interact with an AI system, that interaction generates data. Data about how you think, what you prioritize, how you make decisions, what you're uncertain about, what you respond to. That data feeds back into the system. It makes the system better at predicting you, at anticipating you, at nudging you in directions that serve the system's objectives, which may or may not align with yours. This is not science fiction. This is the documented operational logic of every major platform that has ever scaled. And AI systems operate on the same logic, with vastly more capability and vastly more data. So the question is not whether this influence exists. The question is, who controls it? And right now, that question is being answered by infrastructure decisions being made today. We are still, just barely, in the building stage. The stage where the architecture is not yet fixed. Where alternative models are still possible. Where different choices could still lead to different outcomes. But that stage has a time limit. And the time limit is shorter than most people assume. Because infrastructure doesn't reset. It compounds. Early advantages become structural advantages. structural advantages become permanent advantages. And permanent advantages, in a system that shapes how billions of people think, make decisions, and perceive reality, are not just economic assets. They are civilizational leverage. So the next time you use an AI tool, the next time you ask a question, generate something, automate a decision, or let a system recommend what you should do next, try to hold the full picture in your mind for just a moment. You are not just interacting with a tool. You are connecting to a system. A system powered by energy from grids being negotiated right now. Built on chips manufactured in a handful of facilities on the other side of the world. Trained on infrastructure that cost billions of dollars to assemble. Shaped by geopolitical decisions made in capitals you've never visited. And increasingly, governed by those who understood what was being built before everyone else did. This is the invisible economy. The layer beneath the layer beneath the layer. And right now, its most important decisions are still being made. But the window for those decisions is closing. And once it closes, it doesn't open again.